Well, welcome everybody to yet another episode of KDM, which stands for Kit Dimitri Movies. And I, along with my friend, colleague, and esteemed co-host, Kit Bowen. Hey, Kit, how are you?
I'm good. I'm keeping it as cool as possible in this heat wave.
Well,
Speaking of waves.
it's another great way to stay cool in the summertime and get out of the heat wave is to go to the movies.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
always air conditioned.
It's very
So
true.
that's a great thing to do. Even if the movie is 3 hours, well, the more the better because it keeps you out of your hot house.
It's
And speaking of
absolutely
3 hours,
and heat.
speaking of 3 hours, today we're going to talk about the historic chronicle and biopic of Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's latest big epic, and by big I mean like huge. Kit, you and I, we saw a movie together, which is always fun,
Always fun.
especially since we start co-hosting this show because we talk our notes almost instantly.
We do.
Um, but we were actually in a pretty great position because we got to see Oppenheimer in one of the 25 theaters across the country to show the movie in IMAX 70 millimeter film. So that was pretty special to
Yeah.
me. Like that's my vinyl
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
So
And I know true filmmakers like Christopher Nolan and Spielberg and those they love, especially Nolan. They love to have their films shown in this way
mhm,
because it really does, enhance the experience.
mhm. Yeah. So well let's get rolling, so to speak. And so what did you think of Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer?
Well, it was very, very, very good and quite cinematic, as we just said. It is, but beyond just the mechanics of watching the film and whatnot, and the creative touches that are added to it to enhance the experience, like we said, it's not just a straightforward telling of a person's life. It kind of goes back and forth, and it goes from black and white to color, and there's all kinds of sort of um what I can't think of the word I'm thinking, just touches that make
It's
it. Go ahead.
time shifting
Yeah, but I mean,
type of thing. Yeah.
he kind of like Soderbergh did with Traffic. I mean,
Flourish.
he plays with colors, and he plays with all kinds of things. um I was very, I was involved in this film, and even though it's 3 hours long, it feels, maybe every once in a while it felt like okay, but for the most part I didn't really feel the whole 3 hours. But the thing is, it's a very important story, and biopics in general can be kind of stayed, although I feel like some biopics have been very good, like A Beautiful Mind and Theory of Everything, those kinds of films.
Great examples.
Yeah, they're great biopics, and this one ranks up there. This man, J. Robert Oppenheimer, you know was complicated. Obviously not a perfect person, but certainly an amazing, brilliant mind. And uh you know uh, the idea that he created this bomb, um you know it set about, not only did it you know challenge him as a scientist to create this, and so obviously as a scientist he was into it. He wanted to make this thing, and obviously there was an impetus to beat the Germans during World War II, because there was, they were building their own bomb, I guess, or trying to anyway. And so, there was the impetus to beat them at that. But then what they ended up creating, is obviously one of the most controversial things ever. And it could be a destroyer of worlds. So they don't shy away from any of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, very important story, I thought. And Cillian Murphy absolutely just nails it. He is true tour de force for him, and good for him, because he is an actor I've watched and liked very much. And he's been in Nolan's things before, but this is his first time kind of getting his own starring role. And he, not only does he embody Oppenheimer, looking wise, but he was just he played all of those conflicted emotions in a man who didn't look like he expressed his emotions very often. So to convey that across the way they did and the way the actor did was pretty tremendous. But great supporting roles from Emily Blunt as Kitty Oppenheimer's wife, Matt Damon as the general, Leslie Groves, who sort of spearheaded this whole thing, and then all of the people in this movie. I was just, oh my God, he's in this movie. He's in this movie. Yeah, just a lot of great little tidbits, little cameos, from Gary Oldman as Truman to, just all kinds of people popping up. So I really, really enjoyed it. And 3 hours was worth it.
I agree. I enjoyed it. I believe it to be a flawed film. I'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to talk again about, number one, it is Christopher Nolan. I want to get a little bit into the tech. It was exclusively shot on large format cameras, Panavision 65 millimeter, IMAX 65, and bet you didn't know this, but they even they went to Kodak and said, "Hey, Kodak, do you have 65 millimeter?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." They go, "Yeah, but do you have it in black and white?" And they're like, no." They go, can you make it?" And they're like, we'll try." And so for the first time ever, we got to see, audiences will see, 65 millimeter black and white, which looks stunning. Which goes into, I want to talk about the time shifting that you were mentioning earlier. This seems to be a favorite trope of his, time shifting and history to an extent, going as far back as Memento, right? Then he uses it again in Inception. He uses it in Dunkirk, another historic,
Yes.
not a biopic, but a historic chronicle. But he uses time shifting in that movie very well. Inception that I mentioned. Oh, then there was The Tenant, which, I dare anybody to explain that to me. And then of course it here. Now, the best parallel for me with this movie is Dunkirk, because Dunkirk had 3 stories to tell, as does this. We have a Senate committee hearing. We have, also Los Alamos, the building of Los Alamos, getting Oppenheimer involved. And then, of course, the construction of the bomb. And then we have a behind closed doors inquiry, would you call it, set up to basically defame Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Which
and I'm sorry, say that again.
I mean, that this is what happened to the man after he, was
Yes.
heralded as the father of the atomic bomb and whatever. And then, well, I mean, the way they explain it in the film, which we won't get into too much because we don't want to spoil it, but
I mean, look, it's based off
could have
of a
been
book,
whatever, yeah.
and it's part of history. But Christopher Nolan uses the visual cue of color. So anything that is in color is from Oppenheimer's point of view and perspective. Right. In fact, you maybe knew or didn't know that when he wrote the script, which is based off of a novel, a nonfiction book called American Prometheus. He used that as his guide, but he wrote those parts in first person. And in color to signify, okay, this is from his perspective. Everything in black and white, like that's that committee hearing, approval committee for, I believe it was Secretary of Commerce,
right? Strauss.
That was having Strauss, Robert Downey Jr. And so he uses it to great. I thought, like, from a stylistic standpoint, I thought it looked fantastic. However, I do wish that there, at least from the get-go, they flashed up on screen what year we're
Yeah,
talking about. You
yeah,
know, at least in Dunkirk, he showed the time.
yeah,
So you knew that this part of the story was taking place in this time, the fighter pilot story in this time, and the beach story this time, and they were going to overlap. This one spans, I believe, 45 years. And it would have been nice to at least have a frame of reference, and you didn't have to do it every time.
right.
But we're Nolan, you know, if you're a Nolan fan, one thing that Nolan will never be accused of is spoon feeding his audience. You have to pay attention to him.
It's true.
So I would have appreciated that. I also felt that while I was never bored like you, I felt that there were far too many characters in this movie. Far too many characters. And it became, look, I straight up front, I stink with names. And this movie throws a lot of names at you. And people pop up, people come and go seemingly throughout the entire movie, and they'll show up for seconds, and Rami Malek being one of those characters.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, who is this guy? And then he shows up at the end of the movie, and I was like, where did he come from and why? Like, how did he have the information that, like, because he gave some testimony.
Right.
And I was just like, okay, that's odd. I also had kind of an issue with Florence Pugh's character, who she, you know, so I'm trying to find her name.
Jean Tatlock. She played Jean Tatlock.
Tatlock, who, the way the movie portrays it, it was a very kind of standoffish relationship that the two had. She was a card-carrying communist. All right, it was a very tumultuous time. We had the Germans, Hitler, the Germans, paranoia here in the States. Everybody was a communist. And then we had Pearl Harbor, things going on. Oppenheimer's stuck in the middle. She is a confidant. She is an intellectual. But I felt like
love affair with her, basically.
Yeah, but it was a weird love affair, and then something happens. Something happens to the character that it seemingly involved Oppenheimer in one way, shape, or form, but it's never really explained or like.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't go anywhere, and I just wonder, had they shortened that a little bit, like,
yeah,
would it have affected the story? Because I was trying to figure out, what is this trying to say? I did enjoy Emily Blunt.
I was going to say, I think it was just trying to give sort of a perspective or a depth on this character, on this man. But you're right, it was a little,
but he had a hand in something that was weird.
It was a bit superfluous, but also the idea that, you know, when he's going through his sort of, you know, whatever during the 50s after the war, and they're thinking of, you know, stripping him or you know, declassifying him and whatnot. The idea that he had all of these you know, relationships and whatnot with people who were communists. I mean, they were just trying to pull everything out of the woodwork to go against him. But
that I understand.
Gene thing, the only thing I did appreciate about it was that he was deeply in love with her. And her death, you know, really affected him. So I think it was a way of just showing.
They ambiguously say he had a hand in it, because there's a weird scene in that, right. And I'm like, what are they saying?
I don't think he did, but maybe somebody else did.
Yeah. I don't know. The movie doesn't. The movie, again, there's another character that shows up in a bar, a blonde woman that shows up in a bar. I have no idea who she is, and all of a sudden she becomes like a major thing in this inquiry. Oh, yeah, and I'm like, who is she?
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
you know, there was
I
stuff.
followed that one. I followed that one. She was the wife of another one of his, friends from in the party. He had an affair with her.
Yeah, apparently. So I found it was really bogged down to characters. Now, you talked about the cast, and the cast is a who's who of Hollywood. And I mean, it rivals, you'd agree with me, it rivals like the 70s disaster movies,
Yeah.
like those Irwin Allen, whether it's the Poseidon Adventure, or Towering Inferno, or Earthquake. I mean, cast of thousands. And I believe there might even there might have been a Michael Caine might have made an audio appearance in the movie.
Yeah.
So I get it. But the way that the movie goes on, and the way how it tells its story, I found it very enthralling. It was very entertaining, and it was kind of set up like a Jean le Carré thriller, like a spy thriller, because there is a little espionage going on. There's a traitor amongst in the midst. Yeah, politics that play a heavy part in this. But the performances, I think, look, Cillian Murphy, I think career best for sure. Hopefully remembered come end of the season, award season.
It will.
Robert Downey Jr., look,
Awesome.
let's be honest. The man had a career before Marvel came along. Okay, he had a career.
Yes.
And with Oppenheimer, I think it further proves he'll continue to have a career long after he shed his metallic costume.
Sure thing.
He is so fantastic in this movie, I felt, and the black and white captured him magnificently. I felt so he was great. Matt Damon, I mean, I talked about him about leading performance in Air, which could garner him attention at the end of the year. Well, this supporting role, again, he's fantastic.
Yep.
Again, and Josh Hartnett, this movie. Haven't seen him. Like, I guess it's like a welcome back to the big screen. And I got to be honest, it was great to see him again. Was it?
Yeah,
not?
he was great and aging well. I'll say I'll say that loud. Look good looking.
Yep.
But yeah, so you're right. There are a lot of different characters, but the important people, are there. Like, I didn't realize this. I guess, is he German? Teller, was he German?
He's a German Jew. Oppenheimer, right? Yeah, because he had his friend
Benny Safdie.
Well, there's David Krumholtz, who played his really good friend.
No, I'm talking about the
Jewish.
German guy, Teller, who
was played okay. Benny Safdie,
by the father, who played the father in Are You There, Margaret? Are You There, God?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He was very instrumental in this whole thing as well. I mean, people bring him up. I've been reading a lot about him. Because he was also very much an innovator on the whole thing, but then how he kind of, what ends up happening between the relationship between he and Oppenheimer is interesting.
Yes.
So that was a character I was fascinated by. But yeah, there's so many characters floating around, it's hard. But obviously they had a think tank going on at Los Alamos, and
sure,
all of these people were a part of building this thing. And I think for me, obviously the best parts of the movie are the building and the setting off of the bomb. Because it's just so awe-inspiring. Now, I told you this afterwards, my one complaint, and this has always been my complaint for any kind of movie, but Nolan particularly loves to do this: heavy-handed score, too much score. I could no, it's score is good. It's good.
Oh, I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I sat next to you and you're like, good God, Jesus Christ, so heavy-handed on the score.
Yeah,
I got to see it. I got to hear these comments in real time as the movie was playing.
It bothers me because I can't hear what's going on. I can't hear the dialogue. It's playing too loud. And he did. That's why Tenet was just such a mess for me, because like half the time, the score is like in your face with all the action and it's so loud. And then all of a sudden they're talking and you can't understand anything they're saying. So it's an issue for me. I think Spike Lee also has a problem with that. That's one of my complaints about some of his films. But yeah, I felt like it was too much, and he needed to pick and choose times where it should just be the dialogue. But other times
Well,
when the score was appropriately placed. So that was just
well,
that's one of my
you
things.
probably can't hear it, but I have the score playing right now. I actually, on its own, I find it to be a very beautiful score.
No, it's great.
Very, but it was just, again, I just to bring people into our world of watching movies, right? And this is why movie going is great if you get to do it with a friend who also likes movies, right? And it doesn't matter if like you're on the same page, right? One can love it, hate it, whatever. But if you like it, but it's just really fun because you do have your own, like, you're in theater movie speak because you don't want to be loud, but you're just like, oh good god, the score, like, and it was just like, it's just really funny. And like, but this is the kind of thing that only comes through with the movie going experience. If you're at home watching this on TV, who cares? It's like, but when you're
By
in a
the way,
movie,
everyone, Dimitri doesn't love the fact that you can watch movies on streaming firsthand. Like if they were just being released, they should always go to the theater. This is Dimitri.
well, I
I
mean,
have to agree with Dimitri. Sometimes I don't.
that's
But
if they're made for the theater, but a lot of the stuff that you're getting on Netflix is content. I'm not going to get into that argument now, but this is a movie, though. I have to say, if you're waiting to watch this when it comes to HBO Max or Peacock, it'll be on Peacock because it's Universal. You're missing out. I mean, you really are. Even if you can't see it in the format that we were privileged to, and it was it was great. To not try to see this in the largest, best presentation possible inside a theater, you're really going to be missing out, and you literally will be getting this for a picture instead of this for a picture. So I cannot stress it. It'll be a different movie. I guarantee it. Unless you're if you'd already seen it in the theater, you're going to watch it again. Fine. You said something about Cillian Murphy's performance, and I want to, because this ties into exactly what I'm saying. This is one of the rare times, I think, and this is where Christopher Nolan is so comfortable filming in this format. And he's done it on the Dark Knight movies. He's done it with Inception, and I even believe Tenet and Dunkirk, where he films in this format, this IMAX format. He is not afraid. He is very comfortable, and he is not afraid to shoot close up using IMAX. So Cillian Murphy's like top half fills an entire screen. Now, look, if you're a Cillian Murphy fan, you're going to love it. But to talk about how he expresses his inner and outer turmoil and all his tics and nuances, they really are on display. And I mean full display when you see this on the big screen. And I think that, again, they have their own code. They know how to work together and get, Nolan knows exactly what and how to get that performance from Murphy. And he really is fantastic in this role. The visual effects were practical, from what I understand. There were no real CGI. And the sound, how blown away was it in the sound? We do have to mention this. The bomb goes off. Okay. We're used to seeing movies, war movies, whatever, a bomb goes off, it explodes, boom, boom, boom. It's all in the same thing. This one, again, light travels faster than sound. When this thing goes off, like you just saw this blaze, it was fantastic. But I was sitting there, I had my fingers to my ears going, wait for it, wait for it. And it was about 30 seconds after. And that boom was something else.
Yeah,
That scene.
it was really handled well too. I mean, I thought, because you have all the people there and stuff, and they've got like, well, here. I mean, the thing was, and Oppenheimer and Groves both have they have a conversation about this. they are not 100% sure it's not going to set off some sort of cattle cat
Cataclysmic. Is that the word you're looking for?
yes,
Chain reaction.
chain reaction that could
Yes.
kill the world. They didn't know.
Ignite the atmosphere and
didn't
yeah.
know. How sure are you? He says, well, nearly 0% that anything bad will happen.
Nearly. I love that. It's in the trailer, folks. So but it's a great part in the trailer. It's even better played in the movie. Nearly. Well, what do you expect? It's a theory. Well, I expect 0. I want 0%. But I think too, this is a thing too that I think that Nolan handled really well in his adaptation of that book, because it's history. So we know what happens. We know what it's building up to. We know that they're going to.
Yeah.
Right. But yet, like Cameron and Titanic, in this movie, they still set up a suspense. Like, you still wonder, like, you're still like, well, nearly. I don't want nearly, and like, we know that didn't happen because, well, we're here.
Yeah.
So, but the movie still, it builds a suspense to the countdown. So even when they're counting down and they're going to drop this, you're still like, oh my God, wow, this is going to happen. That to me is the magic of movies and the magic of really good storytelling, albeit, like I said, I feel that this is a little bit flawed because it's too much character, but still, Nolan still knows how to just build a suspense around something that we know the outcome to.
Yeah.
And that scene and everything else building up to it too. How those pieces come together from black and white to color. I mean, it really is a testament to storytelling. You need to pay attention, just like you needed to pay attention in Memento, or you needed to pay attention to Inception, and Dunkirk to figure out,
and no amount of attention paid to Tenet will ever explain what that movie was about.
No. Although because of Tenet, because they mention Oppenheimer, that was the impetus for him to make this movie. I think this movie is far better than Tenet. It kind of, it puts him up there, a great high echelon of filmmaking. I think that it will be, I believe it'll be recognized come award season, if not for script or directing, the technical aspects of this movie. I mean, come on, like they inspired Kodak to create a new film format that has never been seen by people. I think that within and of itself is kind of fantastic, and it's innovation, and it's pushing this movie-going experience boundary. And I love that. So do your best to see Oppenheimer. It's a really big weekend this weekend. I'm not going to talk about and give, there's enough publicity out for both these movies right now, and we're going to talk about the other movie, but Oppenheimer deserves its due. And I think that there are 2 movies in the marketplace this weekend. There's Oppenheimer, and then there's this Barbie movie, right? Barbie. But I think it's great for business. And I think the synergy, the marketing, the synergy has really helped get people out of theaters, or out to theaters. Not just the heat, but people are actually double featuring movies, and that includes this Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer's not for kids.
No.
It's definitely for an older, it's for a cinephile crowd, an older crowd, somebody who can respect history. It's for that audience. I don't believe they'll completely shun it. And again, all one, Nolan wants to make a great movie-going experience, but he does expect his audience to pay attention.
Yeah.
Even in his Dark Knight movies.
Well,
don't get me
started on those.
Well, I mean, but he like his his Dark Knight movies are different than what we have today. He had a different take, so he really does expect his audience to like
Yeah, I mean, I would say he is one of those filmmakers for me in general, that's just hit or miss. I mean, really,
Mhm.
uh, after Memento, I thought, oh my God, this guy's amazing, and then he kept, turning out some good stuff, but then he also, kind of, there's some things he likes to do that bug me. So,
Mhm.
he's not always perfect for me, but certainly those movies like Inception too. I mean, that was a little hard to follow, but the use of score in that actually works because there's a lot of
Yes.
action scenes, and and that works. Like, that's a great score when they're falling back,
Mhm.
and all of that. So that totally worked. I loved that movie.
Same here.
But the Batman series, I didn't love all of them. Dark Knight was probably my favorite, and then the other two
Mhm.
not so much. So I'm a little bit in the minority on that. I know everyone heralds the Nolan's Batman trilogy as being one of the best superhero movies of all time, but not necessarily for me. And they
I'm
weren't
a
good
fan
movies,
of
but
those, but I have them in ratings. But speaking of Inception, I think his greatest movies are the ones like that deserve a repeat viewing. Inception's fantastic, is I think a fantastic Inception. I mean, the Batman movies, sure, if that's your thing, sure. I own them. I've seen them multiple times, but Inception's great to watch again or rewatch. It has a great rewatchability because you pick things up
yeah,
as you go along.
yeah.
Dunkirk is another one of those movies that I think is its rewatchability is fantastic because he so cleverly interweaves the times and they overlap with the characters, and I think it's just brilliantly told and done. um Tenet, yeah, you're right, there's just no saving it. But this movie, I could see
Also,
myself seeing this
Interstellar,
one more time. Oh, I forgot about Interstellar. Yes,
again, another
yes,
one I didn't like that much.
that's another, again, he messes around with time again. I enjoyed Interstellar, and again, for me, it has repeat viewing, and you watch it, you see what's going on, and
Yeah,
I appreciate that. And I do appreciate that he doesn't necessarily spoon feed me. And
yeah.
I'm not part of the Mensa Society. I'm definitely not in Oppenheimer's echelon, but I do enjoy decent storytelling at times, and I like it when it's creative. He at least takes risks,
He
and I
does.
appreciate a filmmaker
Oh,
that takes
he
risks.
is a master.
It,
There's no question.
yeah.
But the other one I love is The Prestige. Oh,
Oh my God, I forgot about The Prestige. The Prestige is again another wonderful, fantastic film
that's
of his. It's one of my favorites. You can rewatch that, pick certain things up. Yeah, he is that he's a really solid filmmaker. Look, as much as we're bagging on Tenet, there were some set
oh yeah,
pieces that looked fantastic, right? There were some, and he
100%.
still gets good performances out of some people too. So yeah, Tenet's not, it's not his best, but there were some set pieces that looked amazing, and this is what he does, and it's all for the other thing you got to appreciate. It's all for the love of cinema. It's all
Yeah.
for the love of movie going and putting the audience in there. Oppenheimer puts you into that, into Los Alamos. It puts you into Oppenheimer's mind, much like A Beautiful Mind did. What
Yes,
Ron Howard did, it puts
I
you into
felt similarities. Yeah, definitely.
very much so. So,
So I would give this. I'm going to give it my star rating. I would give it
yeah.
a solid 4.5, half off, Christopher, for your use of the score. So yes, solid 4.5 for me.
I am giving it a solid 4, which is still very good. I just found that too many characters bogged down, and it was confusing, and they were like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
It was great to see these actors, but I'm giving it 4. It's very good. Highly recommend you see this in the best and biggest screen possible.
3 hours of coolness on your body.
Yeah. So get some popcorn. Go to the bathroom before if
Yes,
you can,
yes.
and don't
Try
drink a
not to
lot of
drink too
Coca-Cola.
much during the. All
It's
right,
always a
everybody.
pleasure going to the movies with
Yeah,
you and
you
doing this
too,
show.
Dimitri.
We'll have more reviews in the near